All right, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining. We are really excited to have you guys here today, and we hope some others from the Idea Accelerator cohort join as well. So for those of you who don't know me, I think I met a couple of you at Idea Accelerator in person. I'm Mindy Rieger. I am the Director of Development. I oversee all of our external partnerships, and um, I work with Carlos and Marvin and Danielle, who's here as well. And I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today, who is Jen Heller, and we are just beyond thrilled that she's volunteered her time to support Mesa for this session and a previous session as well. Jen is obsessed with good design. She's the founder of Artsy Geek, and she and her team bring the love of good design and effective communication to all of their work with local businesses and nonprofits. And they have been in the Bay Area for the last 15 years. So thank you, Jen, and I'm going to pass it to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here with you all. Today we're going to talk about using your visual voice, digital design skills for early career. I tend to go pretty quick. We're going to have some Q&A at the end, but if you have any clarifying questions along the way, please put them in chat and we'll be checking on that regularly. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And today we're going to talk about why visual communication matters, core design principles, practical applications, and some tools and resources to help you with this. Before we get into that, a little bit about me. So I'm Jennifer Heller. I'm the founder of Artsy Geek. I created it 15 years ago, and I have been designing since for my entire life. I was like 12 designing signs for the toilet, and my parents were like, "What is she doing?" And I created my first website when I was in high school. It was when the internet happened. I started building websites right away, and I've been building websites for clients and myself ever since. And I am really passionate about effective design that works. Yes, there will be a recording of this. It will be sent out, I believe. So anybody who has to bounce, please come in. Please take care of yourself. So quick question for everybody. What would you say is your biggest design challenge? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you can think of anything. Perhaps not really knowing colors, spacing. Yes, we're going to talk about all of that. Fonts. Danielle, it's like you know what I'm going to talk about. Yes. All right. So there's lots of things that come up when you're designing and prioritizing the information visually. Excellent. Too cluttered. Great. We're going to talk about all of this. I love these answers. It is a difficult task to prioritize the information visually and to make sure that things aren't too cluttered. So we'll touch on all of that today. So, why does visual communication matter? So, first of all, you typically have 50 milliseconds to make a visual first impression. So, that's faster than a blink of an eye. In professional context, this means your presentation slides, reports, portfolio, and even email formatting are being judged before anyone reads a single word. A well-designed document signals that you pay attention to details, understand your audience, and respect their time. Conversely, poor design can immediately undermine your credibility, making colleagues question your thoroughness and professionalism before you've even presented your ideas. So, design acts as a cognitive filter. So, it's like a filter that a brain goes through that either enhances or hinders how your message is received. When information is presented clearly with a good visual hierarchy, appropriate typography, and logical flow, people can focus on your content rather than struggling to decode it. Poor design forces readers to work harder to understand your message, creates cognitive friction, so it makes it harder for them to understand and can lead them to dismiss valuable ideas simply because they're packaged poorly. Research shows that people actually perceive well-designed information as more accurate and trustworthy, even when the content is identical. So we want to consider if there are two research presentations and one uses consistent fonts, clear data visualizations with proper scales and labels, and logical information architecture versus another that mixes typefaces, uses misleading chart formats, and buries key findings in walls of text. The first researcher is going to appear more confident, more competent, and their findings more reliable, even if both of them conducted equally rigorous studies. In software contexts, a clean user interface with intuitive navigation suggests robust underlying code, while cluttered, confusing interface makes users question the entire system's quality. So now, how does bad design help or hinder in career advancement? So bad design is going to create compound career damage that's often invisible until it's too late. When your work product lacks professionalism, you're less likely to be selected for high visibility projects. If your presentations are hard to follow, stakeholders remember the confusion rather than your thoughts. Over time, these small design failures are going to accumulate into a reputation for being disorganized or careless, potentially costing you promotions, speaking opportunities, or leadership roles, even if your work is excellent. So the tragedy is that brilliant technical work can be completely overshadowed by poor presentation, while mediocre work that's beautifully presented often gets disproportionate recognition and advancement opportunities. So it's worth the time to give everything you're presenting that extra polish. Here we have an example of good versus bad design. This is a real life example from one of our clients, a law firm. They are an extremely successful law firm. And does anybody like the design on the left more than the design on the right? So that's the before. Okay, great. Thank you, Mariana. Yeah. So the one on the left is what they created, and the one on the right is what we revised it to have. And so we're going to come back to this example as we talk about the elements of good design throughout this presentation. But I want to call out a couple things. So first of all, it has what I see all the time in the world. It has a logo in a little white box on a colored background, okay? And so this happens all the time because you're given a logo that's on a white background, and you don't want to have a white background on your slide or whatever you're creating. So you just stick it on there. Well, it looks like an afterthought. It does not feel integrated into the design. There's a really easy way to make it integrated into the design and make this entire bottom section white. And then it would feel more purposeful and less like a haphazard, like, oh, we just slapped our logo on that and we don't really care how it looks. Now you can see that where we used a logo that had white text and a transparent background, and that allowed it to seamlessly be integrated into the design. Sometimes you don't have that, which is why you have to make some changes in how you do it. So, all right, so let's talk about, oh, we already talked about the hidden cost of bad design. All right, so what are some core design principles? The crap principles. All right, so I think we can all remember the word crap after this. And this is an acronym. And the first C stands for contrast, which is making elements stand out. It's what you think of when you say this design pops, is it has good contrast. And here in our revised slide design, we have created contrast by integrating a photo that represents what is going to be talked about. This is a presentation that happened 15 years ago. Wow, that's a long time ago. So we have divided the frame and integrated a contrasting photo, and we've used a dark background so that all the text stands out on the background. When a design has good contrast, it comes away from the page and sticks in your memory. Contrast creates space and difference between elements in your design. Your background needs to be significantly different from the color of your elements so they work harmoniously together and are readable. I want to go back to this original design right here. And I want to go to Alicia's comment that says, it's hard not to make your content, your designs feel too cluttered. And to me, the example on the left feels very cluttered. And part of that is because there's not a lot of contrast in the font sizes, okay? So everything is roughly the same size on the left. On the right, we have significant contrast. We have highlighted the title, and the title is much larger than the subtitle. You want to consider, as we think about prioritizing the information visually, what are the most important elements to get across? In this case, we are driving interest to this talk. So the top thing that matters is the title. And then the second top thing that matters is the subtitle. And then after that, where it is, what the time is, and then who's presenting it. I'm sorry to say, but that is the less important information. So here we've made it smaller, and this gives us a great contrast in our font sizes and allows the important information to pop. Repetition is the R in crap. Repetition creates consistency. One of the things that we really talk to our clients all the time about and to everybody about is about consistency in fonts and colors. And you'll notice that in our slides, we have four main colors that are our brand colors. They're pink, green, yellow, and orange, and they're particular shades of these. We also have particular fonts that represent our brand. The fact that we use these colors and fonts in everything we create immediately signifies to the people who know the brand, oh, this is Artsy Geek. If you limit yourself to two strong typefaces or three strong colors, you'll soon find that you have to repeat some things, and that's okay. It's often said that repetition unifies and strengthens a design. If only one thing on your poster is in blue italic sans serif, it can read like an error. But if three things are in blue italic sans serif, you've created a motif and are back in control of your designs. Going to our example, here we have integrated the repetition of small green subtitles in all caps. We've integrated the repetition of dividing up this image 2010, the date and the time, divided it by small green lines, and had it all consistently sized. We also have the repetition of this line, which is repeated. And of course, we have the repetition because we've used consistent fonts throughout. The A stands for alignment, which is structure and balance. Alignment creates the structure and balance of a document. It's a clear, when you have a clear sense of alignment, it establishes the order and organization of a document's various elements. So this is how you prioritize the information visually and avoid having your design product feel too cluttered. It's important to align everything intentionally. If a document lacks alignment, it will cause the piece to appear messy, which won't catch the eye of the reader. So going back to our example, now we do have good alignment in this before here. Everything is center aligned. So good work, that's great. Here We have left aligned because we integrated this photo. Let me go back to we have everything left aligned, and then we've also grouped different pieces of information, and this gives it structure. So we have kind of this less important information at the top, less important information on the bottom, and then the big title and subtitle, as we discussed, being the most important part. The P in PRAP stands for proportion, visual size, and weight of elements. So this is about how the size and weight of elements in your composition, how they relate to each other. It often helps to approach your design in sections instead of as a whole, as we've talked about with this section, the most important information, and then kind of the subsections of the information. Grouping related items can give them the importance at a smaller size. Think of a box at the bottom of your poster for ticket information, or a sidebar on a website for a search bar and navigation. Additional essentials: hierarchy, guiding the user's eye. I'm going to give you some time to look at this slide and see if your eye does what we expect it to. So most people are going to read from left to right and from top to bottom. And in this case, the bright green U catches the eye and starts you on reading the biggest text. And then you're going to go to the subtext, the next smallest text, and then the next smallest. You'll probably read this before the paragraph. And here's the last thing you're going to read. Some of you maybe came back and read this. Awesome. Some of you maybe read this and maybe you didn't, And so it's very easy to predict what you're going to read and what humans in general are going to read because we are so predictable. Negative space is another essential design element. We want to have as much, less is often more when it comes to negative space. So here on the left, we have kind of a example where all the information is kind of crammed in one spot, and on the right, it's more laid out with giving some space around the headline, which allows the headline to feel more like a headline because it has space around it. Let's look at a real world example. So here we have the iPhone 17 Pro ad. They have lots and lots of negative space in here, right? There's more negative space than content in this content. They have used a photo in a very creative way to draw your attention to the title and the subtitle. And as we've established, they have a clear visual hierarchy of title, subtitle, and sub-information with their buttons right here. Color psychology and emotional impact and accessibility. So different colors create different feelings in people. So red can communicate power, danger, love. Orange can communicate social affordability and friendly. Yellow, creativity, happiness, optimism. Green, health, nature, growth. Blue, trust, loyalty, and tranquility. Purple, wealth, luxury, and wisdom. Pink, compassion, sincerity, nostalgia. Teal, renewal, calmness, clarity. Black, formal authority, mourning. And white, purity, innocence, and peace. What's everybody's favorite color? Orange, purple, green. Yes. It's probably not going to shock anybody that my favorite is pink. I've got a lot of pink in my background. And a lot of pink on my slides. All right, practical, accessibility. So I thought we had a slide on accessibility. So accessibility is about having contrast between the right colors. So white and red is a I'm looking at the Mesa logo on Carlos's screen. What in small font sizes, it can be very hard to read white on red and red on white. In larger font sizes, it's easier. When you're designing for the web, you do want to, and just designing in general, you want to make sure that you have good contrast between the background color and the text so that it's easy to read. I think that white text is great as long as it's on a dark enough background. And there are websites, so if you search accessibility checker on the internet, you can load in two colors and it will tell you whether it has enough contrast to be easy to read at different font sizes. Some people have visual impairments, so they can't see as well as other people. And so it is very important as we're putting together our designs that we consider the contrast between the between two colors, between the text and the background, so that the text pops, right? It's got enough contrast and moves so that it's easily legible from for people with and without visual impairments. All right, so let's talk about practical applications. Branding basics. So when you're building a personal brand kit, you want to pick a few colors and a maximum of 2 coordinated fonts to use for your brand kit. Okay, so this is like these are going to be your colors and your fonts that you're going to put everything in. So you could put your resume in there, if you're creating different things for, if you're a band, have a color scheme, have some fonts, be consistent. That is how you create a brand with a life of its own, because you create this consistency in colors and fonts. If you're working for an organization, they may have a brand guidelines document that tells you what fonts and colors to use. And if they don't, I would love to talk to them and get them one. If you do want to create a personal logo, say of your name or another word, choose a different font to use that isn't one of the fonts that you're choosing for your main font, so that the logo is unique and stands apart from the rest of the content. So once you choose your kind of colors, fonts, and logos, then you can start designing and be really, really consistent. And also, if you're doing a one-off project, you don't need to necessarily choose this forever. It can just be, for this one-off project, I'm going to choose these colors. If we go back to our examples here, we've used a lot of blue. And as we know from our color psychology, blue represents trust. And so it's a very common color, especially in the legal industry and all over the place, where blue. And so we have the color scheme is really blue, shades of blue and green, which we've gotten from the logo. And there's a little bit of gray in here, this kind of a blue-gray color, but they're all kind of muted and they're cohesive. There's a great website called Color Schemes. I am losing what it's called. I'm going to show you it in just a second. Colors.com, COOLORS.co. Here we go. Here on this website, we can explore different palettes. And so you can basically go here and choose one that feels like it represents the work that you're wanting to do and feels balanced and professional. So Depending on the work you're doing, you might not want to choose vibrant color fiesta. That's definitely one I would choose. Um, when I first started my company and named it Artsy Geek and picked this bright color scheme, I had a somebody I'd met who ran a video store say, couldn't you think of a real business name? So he wasn't a big fan of the colors, but I love color, and I find that we attract clients that love color too. So it really depends on what your end goals are. You can choose a very brown color scheme, or, here's one that's all red and black, and it gives you a selection of colors to work with. You would probably, with this one, need some lighter colors for contrast. So you could use white or light gray for your typography on top of those colors. Going back to real world applications. There are all sorts of templates out there. So as we think about, how we have a question, what do lighter and pastel greens say in general? So let's look at our color psychology. So a light green would be a combination of green and white, and maybe a little yellow, depending on it, on the shades that we picked. So I would say that that is a combination of purity, innocence, and peace, and health, nature, and growth. And I would find that to be a very um, grounding and kind of earthy color scheme. So it'd be great for, research related to the earth, or it could be great for all sorts of applications. A spa, yes, absolutely. So there are tons of templates out there. Canva has a million templates. So if you pick a color scheme and you pick some fonts, and talking about fonts, I was going to show you that at Google Fonts, we can choose fonts very easily. So if I look at this and I'm like, all right, well, let's see. Open Sans is a great font that feels very modern and user friendly. They have at Google Fonts, fonts.google.com, they have given you can click on like, okay, so we want calm fonts. Here are some calm fonts for you to choose from. And if we click on any of these given fonts, there's a way to find, let's see, I wanted to do this ahead of time, but let's see, Google font combinations. They have a whole list of Google fonts. There's all sorts of places where you can find pairings of fonts that will work well. So here we have Arvo and Geist, Roboto Slab, and Roboto. So let's see, fontpair.co. I'll put that in the chat too. So you can pick a color scheme from colorcoolers.co and a pair of fonts that feels good to you from fontpair.co, and boom, you've got a brand kit that's going to work for you. So again, back to the templates. There are all these templates. So in Canva, you can just pick a template and apply your fonts. Just change the fonts to what you want and change the colors to the color scheme you have, and update your content. And then consider crap and hierarchy and negative space and while you're putting in your content. Whenever you're doing any of this, you do want to consider your audience and your accessibility. So if your audience is older people and you're giving a presentation, you want to have bigger text on your slides. If your audience is younger, you're probably more cool with incorporating some fun colors and some, silly graphics. So definitely consider that. And as we've talked about, accessibility is essential so that you can ensure that people can easily read things. Let's talk about presentations. We are all always putting together presentations like this one. And so we have some very important rules to follow while you're putting together your presentations. So, what's going to make a good presentation? One idea per slide. Okay. And I think this is hilarious because I am showing you a slide with three big ideas, three bullet points, and I'm telling you only one idea per slide. So, there's always an opportunity to break rules, but these are rules of thumb to consider as you're putting together your presentations. You don't want to put a lot of text on your presentation. If you put a lot of text, then people will read the text instead of listen to what you're saying. Whenever possible, you want to use visuals, lists, and bullet points instead of large paragraphs. You want to use consistent templates and branding throughout. So, as we have in our examples, we have a very consistent color scheme, right? We've gone with shades of blue because it's professional and easy to do. We have white text on very dark backgrounds and dark text on very light backgrounds. Everything is consistent. Now, it can be very difficult to to customize graphs and stuff to be super colorful. So do the best you can, use it, use colors that are consistent with your color scheme as best you can. Social media marketing essentials. So, first of all, when you're putting together your LinkedIn or your Instagram, you know, unfortunately, people do probably Google you when you're looking for an internship. And so you do want to consider how your social media is coming across. So, especially for LinkedIn, your headshot should be professionally lit with a clean, uncluttered background that doesn't compete with your face. Frame yourself from the mid chest up, maintain direct eye contact with the camera, and wear clothing that's appropriate for your industry, but slightly more polished than daily work attire. You want to look, really pretty polished. Avoid busy patterns or distracting accessories, and the image should be high resolution and recent. Outdated photos create trust issues when people meet you in person. There's a realtor that goes around town and drops off flyers all the time at my house, and the profile pic that he has on his flyer is A, super pixelated, and B, at least 30 years old. And I think it's hilarious because it doesn't look anything like him anymore. So you really want to authentically represent who you are in your profile photo while exuding professionalism and using a really great headshot that highlights your face and doesn't have a lot of competing elements so that people go straight to your face. Your banner above your photo is prime visual territory that many people, myself included, underutilize. I realize that putting together this presentation for you. So you could put up there some stock imagery that represents what you're working on, or you could create a custom banner using your fonts and colors that reinforces your professional brand. This could include key metrics from your work, a clean infographic of your skills, your professional tagline, or a minimalist design that incorporates your industry's visual language. You want to keep text large enough to read on mobile device and ensure good contrast for accessibility. When you're posting, you want to share content that reinforces your expertise through thoughtful commentary on industry trends, behind the scenes glimpses of your work process, or insights from projects you've completed. So this is all coming together to create a visual first impression on your LinkedIn profile. And if you do have public other profiles, it is a super bonus to have consistent visual identity across all your platforms. So, the same profile picture, using the same fonts and colors on your cover photos, that sort of thing. We have gotten to the final part of our presentation, which is tools and resources. So there are tons of free and low cost design tools out there now, so many more than when I was getting started. So Canva is a very easy way to create decks, presentations, social media updates. They have graphs that you can, you know, putz with to try to make them accurate. Um, so Canva's great. They have tons of templates there that you can grab, like I was mentioning before, and change your fonts and colors. Squarespace and Wix are website builders that you can put up a website fairly quickly, again, using your fonts and colors to create a unified brand experience across your LinkedIn, your website, all of it. Unsplash and Pexels is a great place to get free stock photography. Some of it's a little generic, but photos and having visual elements is better than nothing. And Google Fonts, as we looked at, offers so lots of great typography options for your fonts without spending any money whatsoever. So, our key takeaways. Design is a communication skill, not just aesthetics. You want to start with principles, not tools. Consistency is going to beat perfection every time. And your visual voice should reflect your professional brand and your goals. So we will end with and crap, yes. You are awesome. Thank you so much. Please let me know. Slides Go is pretty cool for Google Slide templates. I have never been there. I gotta check that out. I'm gonna make a note. Slides Go, that's awesome. Great. We have some time for questions and discussion points. So what came up for you during this? Didn't know about the palettes website. Awesome. Font pairings. Yes, absolutely.
Something I would note is a lot of companies, including ours at UC, is really thinking about the accessibility features on websites and colors and things like that from an accessibility standpoint. So I think that that was really useful information and tools.
That's great. I had this example called up last time we did this, and I wanted to call it up now. So this is an example of a flyer a friend of mine created for her show. She's a singer and songwriter. And this is my friend down here, and this is the person she's performing with. And I thought this was a really good contrast between profile images that work and profile images that don't work. This one, Nancy's, is very your eye goes straight to the face. Like when we were talking about this, I said, no, don't have too cluttered of a background, right? So this is a fairly cluttered background. However, it is cluttered with musical things, so it is on brand. My friend Ondine has a beautiful photo, but it is low contrast. She is dissolving into the background. So your eye is not drawn to her. And you can also, it's also low resolution, so you can kind of barely see her. And if we zoom in, which I guess I can't really do here, it will get a little bit pixelated, which is what happens when you're not using the high resolution image. So this is, I think, a really good example of do and don't in terms of profile images. Any advice for creating a presentation as a team? Yes, all right. So that is a very good question. We work with all sorts of people all the time. We work with teams, in the business setting, and it is very hard to balance all of the kind of competing opinions about design, and I'm sure about content and like the priorities of the content and all of that. And I think that one thought would be to divide up um, the responsibilities so that one person is putting everything in the presentation to keep it consistent, and the other people are doing other pieces of it. Or perhaps you're looking at the color schemes together and picking a color scheme, you're looking at the fonts together and picking the fonts together. I don't know if anybody from Mesa has some better advice than that. Advice for presentation notes. What's written in presentation mode? So just now I had notes in my presentation mode, and I also had notes on a Google Doc. And so that was a little bit confusing. I needed to clean that up before this. So I would say to either put all your notes in the presentation notes or put them all in the Google Doc. I would definitely put bullets instead of full sentences so that you don't come across as reading. I did read a little bit today, and I hope that that didn't detract from the engagement, because it is way more engaging when somebody is organically speaking, even if they have notes and bullets that they're speaking from, than if somebody's just standing up there and reading their notes.
Want to give time for one or two more questions.
Ye- Yes, so I had a question particularly on, our project. We're gonna pitch an idea. I think it's 5 minutes. Like, about how many slides do you think are like reasonable to have like a good, like relay our message across, and not like overloading the audience with a bunch of ideas.
You said that you have 5 minutes,
Yes,
4 slides,
four
or
slides.
yeah,
Okay.
or maybe 5, a slide a minute. There are different presentations. There are different uh, ways you use presentations. So there are the presentations that you present, and then there are presentations that you send out to, say, prospective clients or, prospective employers. And those can have a lot more information, right? If you're sending somebody something to look at, that can have text that they have to read or whatever, right? But when you're presenting, you want the focus on you. So your slides are just there to look pretty and represent the project. They are communicating visually, but you are doing the communication while you're up there presenting. So let's go back to our pitch deck here that we kind of put together. Um, so yeah, 5 minutes is not a very long time at all. Hold on. Where's my, one sec. So I could see having an intro that just has the title of your project and your names presented by, and then a really very direct, like key points, very minimalistic for the rest of them, so that people aren't getting distracted from what you're saying and they're focusing on what you're saying and not on the slide. So each of these has very little content, right? So About Us has just a couple, I guess that's one sentence. Um, I I don't know much about the projects you guys are doing, but I know that you're science and tech people, so I imagine you might have some data to present. But presenting data can get dicey because people can get really into analytic mode and be like, what's happening with this data? So you might just use some relevant stock imagery and put your key message right there on those. But that sounds very challenging, and I really wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
All right, we have time for just one more question.
No. So the question is, do you purchase Pantone Color of the Year products? I do not. I try not to really get bogged down in trends because I believe good design is really timeless. And so, I don't care as much about the trends. And when I'm designing for our clients, I want to create things that are going to outlast the trends. I don't want them to have to redesign everything every 3 years. And some of the Pantone colors of the years are pretty muted, and I prefer very bright colors, clearly. And these Pantone wall hangings that I have behind me, we made, and it's our color, and we printed it at like a canvas prints place. So it's not real Pantone. Pantone would probably sue me for having that in my background.
Well, I want to say thank you to Jennifer and for Artsy Geek. You're awesome. We're so appreciative of everything that you guys are doing, and supportive of Mesa and our students. Would it be okay if anyone had additional questions to reach out to you?
Absolutely. I'll put my email in the chat.
Great.
And I'd be
Thank you
happy to
so much.
review your slide deck, Mariana, if you wanted to send it my way and I could look at it.
That's very generous of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, good luck, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks
Thank you,
everybody for
Jennifer. That's
joining us
great.
today.
Thank you.
Bye
Have a
bye.
great rest of your day, everybody.